The storm wrenches the fishing vessel in half. The yawning sound of metal buckling and ripping can barely be heard over the explosive waves. Crew members pour out of the fragmented ship, washed away with the water, like ants fleeing a flooding nest. The deck lurches and tips upwards into the air. A wave crashes against it, almost knocking the sailor off the railing, but he clings on for dear life. Soaked through, shivering violently, and feeling the dreaded exhaustion creeping into his limbs, he looks around helplessly as his crewmates drown around him. Only one man remains on the deck with him, but the captain's usual steely confidence has gone. Behind the man's bushy beard and grizzled skin, the sailor sees a little boy scared out of his mind. The captain grabs the sailor by the scruff of the neck and hauls him close enough for them to shout over the sound of the seas around them. "I saw her!" The captain's rambling and ranting, repeating himself and gesticulating wildly at the seas around them. "A naiad! I saw her in the water this morning. Our voyage was cursed from the start. We should never have left port. She's in the water now, she..." A colossal wave throws what is left of the boat through the air. The railing slips through the sailor's fingers as he flies high between the waves. For a moment, the world stands still. It's like he's a gull hovering in place, surveying the carnage beneath him. And there in the water, what looks like... But the world isn't standing still. He hurtles back towards the ocean and slams into it, hard enough to knock the air clean out of his lungs. Icy water tugs at him, pulling him downwards, deeper and deeper, colder and colder. Like arms wrapping around him, dragging him. The sailor wakes with a start. Water laps at his face. What were once hulking waves are now little more than ripples. He spits out a mouthful of sand and shakes his head. His body's trembling violently from the cold, but the warm glow of the sun on his back is already doing its best to help him. How on earth had he survived that? There are groans all around him. Dotted along the beach are his fellow fishermen. He hasn't got the energy to count them, but it doesn't look like all of them. Just ahead of him, further up the beach, sits the captain. Rocking back and forth, trembling, the captain noiselessly points a finger out to sea. Using what little energy he has left, the sailor rolls onto his back to see the silhouette of a woman standing there on the water. No, not a silhouette. The morning sunlight is shining straight through her, as if she's made of nothing but water. She steps delicately across the surface of the water, walking towards the coughing fishermen who have all seen her by now. There's a delicacy to how she walks, tiptoeing gently on the rippling water, as if scared of disturbing it even slightly. The light dances and glitters on her skin like it does across the ocean. No, not skin. She really is made of water. Every inch of her is composed entirely of what looks like the purest, cleanest water the sailor has ever seen. Was it her? The arms that he felt dragging him through the water? Did she save him? Did she save all of them? The water nymph waits with the men until the ambulances arrive. She walks across the sand going between them. Every few minutes, she dips her toes back in the sea and takes what looks like a deep breath, even though she has no lungs to fill. Then she's back amongst them, offering noiseless comfort. There's an old abandoned house just up from the beach, what looks like the mansion of a former millionaire. In apparent fascination, the nymph keeps going over to examine the ornate fountain in the courtyard. Even in a state of disrepair, the fountain is stunning. She lowers herself gently into the water and disappears under the surface, just as the first ambulance rounds the corner. As the paramedics wrap the foil blanket around the sailor and walk him to the vehicle, he catches the nymph poking her head out of the surface of the fountain's water. He's not the only one to see. Tucked just out of sight near the tree line is a nondescript black sedan with a group of men sitting inside. One of them takes a photograph of the water woman in the fountain, while another talks urgently over the phone. The sailor has barely been in the back of the ambulance for 2 minutes before one of the men from the car approaches him. The man holds an expensive-looking watch in his hand. "Excuse me, sir, does this belong to you?" The sailor sits up suspiciously. He's about to open his mouth to refute the man when the needle penetrates his thigh and the amnestic fills his bloodstream. By the time the sailor arrives at the hospital, all his memories of the previous 24 hours have slipped away into the abyss. The containment team is at work in less than 6 hours, while a group of agents, dressed in scrubs, follow the ambulances to the hospital to ensure all accounts of the ship's crash have been entirely erased. Another team sets to work, cordoning off the beach. A tourist family, excited about their day at the beach, argue with the disguised agents cordoning off the road. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there's nothing we can do. A shark sighting is a shark sighting. We just can't risk it today." Meanwhile, a steady stream of construction vehicles rumbles past, followed by a large Home Depot truck. They all pull up outside the mansion, where a team of agents has the fountain surrounded. Tasers and cattle prods at the ready, they grip their weapons at even the slightest ripple of water. Excavators get to work quickly, drilling at the ground around the fountain and cracking through the paving stones. And before anyone nearby has any clue of what's happening, the fountain has been removed, loaded into the back of the watertight fake Home Depot truck, and has disappeared over the horizon. The water nymph refuses to poke her head out of the water the whole way. The world around her is dark and dry. It shakes and rumbles for hours. The beautiful fountain she'd climbed into just a few hours earlier now feels tiny. There's barely enough water in here for her to swim in a circle. She'd always observed these strange-looking vehicles from a distance, lifting her eyes up above the waves for a few minutes to watch them crawling along the dark roads with their 18 wheels. She'd always wondered what was inside all of them, with their colorful paints and strange names. At least she now has some idea of what Home Depot does. Part of their business model evidently involves kidnapping. To stop the panic rising up too high in her chest, the water nymph focuses on stilling the water in the fountain. All of the bumps and turns in the road, she focuses all her energy on holding all the water in place and keeping it level. If the water around her is still, maybe she won't feel so scared. It isn't really working. But at least her precious little amount of fresh water isn't spilling out all over the watertight inside of the container. She's just about convinced herself that she's used to her cage when it suddenly stops. The rumble sound cuts out, the shaking stops, and voices somewhere outside discuss what to do with her, saying words like containment protocol, initial testing, and security measures. The water nymph dips her head back below the surface of the water as the rear doors open. She's going to make the most of this. That's what she's decided. Having spent all her life underwater, observing the humans from afar, she'd always dreamed of one day meeting one. There had been moments, sure, times when she'd wave at a child on the deck of a ferry or guide a ship through the fog, but up close? Never. They look funny, these people. When you see them up close, they're such strange colors, so fleshy and hairy. It's bizarre not being able to see through them. How are they supposed to swim? These humans in particular are even more strange than the others. Dressed in long white coats, always walking around with clipboards and strange little devices that light up and make sounds when they poke them. She wonders if they get sick of having their legs stuck to the ground all the time. What if they see something interesting floating above them? They can't just swim upwards. They need to get on one of those plane things. This will be fun, getting to meet real people for the first time. She keeps telling herself that because if she doesn't, it all becomes too scary. They haven't put her back in the sea, a river, or even a pool. They've just kept her in her fountain. It sits right in the middle of a brightly lit chamber. 4 white walls, a white ceiling, and a white floor. 1 white door. The lights are always on, the temperature always the same. For days and days, she just sits in her fountain, alone. Occasionally, one of the humans will come in wearing a big rubber suit. They look totally ridiculous. Taking big, slow steps, they'll approach her fountain. The first time, she jumped up out of the water to greet the human, doing her best to wave like she's seen them do to each other. But the human immediately turned around and ran back out of the chamber. So next time, she was slow and gentle, raising both her hands innocently and letting the human approach without doing anything. The human lowered some kind of glass container into the water in her fountain and took some of the water away. He must have been thirsty. She's seen the humans get like that sometimes. How they're not thirsty all the time, she has no clue. It doesn't look like there's a drop of water anywhere in them, except for their eyes. She tries to catch the human's eye as he leaves, but he just walks straight out of her chamber, carrying away the little container of water. But this time, she has an idea. She waits patiently for a few days, waiting for another one of the humans to come and see her. It's hard to tell how much time has passed because it's always sunny in here, but it must have been a few days by now. Sure enough, the door opens, and a human in another big rubber costume comes in. She rises out of the water slowly so as not to scare them and lets her form melt and shift. Feeling her body flow into a different shape, she does her best to copy the human's big rubber suit. She's practiced this for years in the sea, copying the shapes of different humans she sees. The human stops walking and stares at her. She tries to wave again. The human waves back. Success! For almost a minute, they stand there waving at each other. She knows this is longer than most humans would wave at each other, but it's just so exciting she can't help herself. Maybe this will be her first friend. Imagine that, having a human friend. The human takes a hesitant step towards her. This is her chance. Lifting herself up and out of the water, the The nymph steps out of her fountain for the first time. She pauses, careful not to spook the human. They do scare very easily, but this time, he stays. Better than that, he takes another step towards her, then another until they're within touching distance. She can feel the water beating in her chest, pumping excitedly through her body. The human has another one of those glass containers in its hand. It raises the container up slowly for her to look at. She leans in to see why this strange little creature is showing her a piece of glass. She's seen these 1,000 times before in the seas. There's glass and plastic everywhere for her to look at. What's so special about this one? The human takes a swipe at her. The glass container strikes the side of her head and extracts a chunk of water. She staggers away, hands raised in fear. What had she done wrong? Why did the human do that to her? She feels faint. Her head swims and not in the usual pleasant way. Her body works hard to redistribute all the water around her body, rebuilding that part of herself in a split second, but it doesn't stop the pain or the sudden wave of tiredness. She stumbles back into the fountain and plunges beneath the surface, letting the water merge with her body again. But the surface of the fountain isn't still. It trembles and shakes as she lies at the bottom in fear. Why had the human done that to her? By the time she has the courage to peek out of the water again, the human is gone. The lights in the ceiling seem brighter than ever. The next day is the first time she really misses the sea. She would race from coast to coast, feeling herself getting dragged along in the ocean gyres as she flowed between continents. She would study the rainbow colors of the Great Barrier Reef before catching a current to Venice or Jamaica. She'd hug the bottom of cruise ships and dance in and out of the propellers on the backs of cargo ships. But here, in her cell, all she can do is swim around her fountain, round and round in circles. That is, until the humans return. 3 of them come into her room, each carrying strange long objects. She's not sure she's seen those things before and is desperate for a closer look, but after what happened with the glass the other day, it doesn't seem like a good idea. She still hasn't worked out what she did wrong there, but clearly the human was not happy with her for some reason. Best to be very gentle with them for the time being, until they're proper friends. The 3 humans have a box with them, full of water. She's so excited to see it, she leaps straight out of the fountain before realizing she needs to be careful. Patiently as she can, she approaches the box and touches it. The humans nod encouragingly. Her excitement overwhelms her, and she dives right in. It feels so good to have fresh water to explore, even if it's just a small tank. She barely even notices as they close the lid on her and wheel her into a different room. A glass wall lines the edge of this new chamber. Funny little humans in white coats stand behind it, making notes. She climbs out of her little tank and waves at them. It's a smaller room than her normal one. Why have they brought her in here? A slamming noise behind her makes her jump, and she spins around to see the 3 humans have wheeled away her little tanks on wheels, leaving her alone in the room. She looks around with a little anxiety. There's nowhere to swim in here. Have they made a mistake? She can't be here without water. Doing her best to copy human movements, she tries to mime to the people behind the glass that she needs her water. They don't seem to understand her, just start scribbling even more things on their clipboards. It's warm in here. Warm and dry. This isn't good. In no time at all, she can feel herself drying out. An hour goes by, then another. She's never been out of the water for this long. What are they doing? Don't they understand what she is? Her head starts to feel faint. She slumps down on the floor and turns herself into a ball. Shaped like this, hopefully, she won't be evaporating so fast. Then they'll give her the water back. For hours she sits in a ball, waiting, until mercifully, her little tank on wheels returns, and she's taken back to her fountain. They do the same to her the next day, and the day after that, starving her for hours, then returning her to her fountain. They top up the water in it occasionally, but other than that, they don't seem to be doing anything nice for her at all. Are they doing this on purpose? Surely not. She's their friend. She's being kind, doing all of their weird games even when she doesn't want to. Humans aren't cruel, they wouldn't do that to her. But then she finds herself in a different situation entirely. They do the same as they've been doing for the previous few days, wheeling her into the testing chamber and making her stand there on her own. But it's colder today, much colder. She tries to explain to them through the glass, rubbing her shoulders and shivering, but they just keep making their notes. This isn't good. She can't stand the cold. It's not good for her. Painful crystals start forming on the surface of her skin, stabbing into her and solidifying her body. She cries out noiselessly, but the humans keep going until she feels herself losing consciousness. Weeks go by, and with each experiment they do, the water nymph worries more and more that these humans aren't really her friends. They've started giving her mazes, complex plastic structures that she gets forced unceremoniously into, where she has to swim through various pipes and tubes until she can push a button on the other side. At first, she was expecting a prize. Maybe this is why they had her kept here for so long. They needed help solving these puzzles, and their fleshy bodies couldn't fit through the tubes. But nothing happens when she presses the button. They just pull a plug and drain her out of the bottom. Today, she's had enough. When are they going to put her back in the ocean? She's just going to wait here at the start of the maze until they tell her. It's only fair. The water in her chest leaps for joy as a human enters the test chamber and approaches her. She raises out of the water and waves to greet him, just as he lifts the long, strange device in his hand and jabs it into her chest. The electricity shoots all through her body and sets her mind ablaze. It takes all her strength not to burst into 1,000 droplets. Convulsing and crying, she falls backwards into the maze. The human brandishes the weapon at her again. She has nowhere to go but into the maze. She solves it in a split second, but as she presses the button, she feels a sinking feeling settling over her. What if they don't want to let her out? It's all her fault. What was she thinking? Her one shot at making friends, and she'd blown it. She sits crying in her fountain, feeling her tears flow into the water around her and back into her body. It was the acid. She hates acid, and always has. She'd swam near a factory once and got a dose of it. It hurt, more than anything she'd ever felt before. It would flow into her chest and sit there, burning and burning. She can still feel it now. So when the humans in the rubber suits had poured some into her fountains, she'd lost her temper, slamming into them with all her force. For months, they've been hurting her, jabbing her, and exhausting her. But they're her friends, right? And you shouldn't hurt your friends. You definitely shouldn't kill your friends. Shouldn't rip open their rubber suits and force yourself down their throats, drowning them in their own bodies. Her fountain's red with blood and burns from the acid. And it's all her fault. What had she done wrong to make them treat her like this? Why couldn't they just be friends? After a few weeks, a group of humans come in and clean up the mess, refilling her fountain with clean water. She doesn't lift her head above the surface. They install a pipe above her fountain that drip feeds water onto her. Drip, drip, drip. And just like that, she's no longer seen as human. Drip, drip, drip. The lights burn white. The door stays closed. Drip, drip, drip. The water nymph sits in her fountain. Drip, drip, drip. After a year, she stops crying. A year after that, she gives up on thinking, too. 3 years of near silence pass, with only the sound of dripping water from the pipe, until the door to her chamber opens. Something flutters in her chest. She lifts her head out of the water. A friend? Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-3063. A fly is your new telepathic therapist.